Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Shadows Podcast. I'm your host, Trip Bodenheimer, and I'm here with Robert Zackery. You're the third, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm the third as well. So this is a big moment. I don't think I've had a fellow third on the show. Um,
First for everything. First time
any,
for everything.
any kind of nickname growing up, like Trey or anything like that?
Not at all. Buster.
Buster. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Completely opposite. It's a southern thing, right? Being from Tennessee.
Yep.
I'm
Where are you located now?
in Tampa, Florida. So I retired out of Special Operations Command headquarters here at Tampa. And so we decided to make this home as well.
So your spot at the time we're recording is an undefeated Tampa Rays.
Yes. 10-0.
Yeah, well, I think 11-0 now.
Oh, really? They played again?
Yeah, I think they played
Okay.
last night. I think I saw 11-0. I was like, wow, that is
We
crazy.
call it Champa Bay for a reason, right?
Tampa Bay got the
Yeah.
Lightning and Bucks a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we had the Super Bowl champs and Stanley Cup winners,
Yeah,
and then the Rays came in second in the World Series, all within the same sports year.
yeah,
I'm not sure this has happened before.
yeah. I'd say maybe LA might have had something close to it, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
Tampa's definitely a hub for professional sports. Uh, all right, so first thing before we get going with finding out a little bit more about you, kind of unpacking your journey, rapid fire questions for you. First one,
Send it.
book recommendation.
Wow, that's a good one. I think again.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
I like
just
that one.
I it's weird you say that because I read that one and then I was working on a list for someone today and think again was on, I think it was on Chief Master Sergeant Air Force's
It
recommended.
was. It was. So I think 2 years ago, that's how I got introduced to that book. Um, and when I say books, I'm more of a um, collection of different thought leaders, more
Yeah.
so in articles and small snippets, right? And then putting things together. But book, I say think again. I like that one.
Okay. We'll have that under our resource recommendations. What is a bucket list thing for you to do that you haven't accomplished yet?
Wow. So I think I'm pretty well accomplished with some of my bucket list items, right? But I'll say wingsuiting. So I'm a civilian skydiver, but also a military free fall. We call it skydiving in the
Yeah.
military. But wingsuiting, haven't done the wingsuit thing. So I like to maybe step off a cliff somewhere and test
Just
that
go.
out. Just go. Yeah, yeah. I got to do it from a plane first. That way I can correct my, deficiencies and get control of it. But then later on, I'll step up and, make it a little bit more risque and have a mountainside behind me to make sure I'm straight.
Yeah, I was like, that's not a whole lot of room for error with that. Like you see the ones who go like in between the mountains and all this other crazy stuff.
Yes, yes, I'm not doing that yet. That's years away. Years away.
Just open skies first.
Open skies first. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
One thing people buy that you think is a waste.
Oh wow, that is a hard one. That is a hard one.
And you gotta be
Uh,
careful too, because we're gonna have some listener who just bought something and they're gonna be like, I'm turning
yeah,
this episode off.
I'll say I'm guilty of this as well, but I'll say cars, right? Vehicles. Oftentimes we buy vehicles to impress people that we don't know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing I'm guilty of, I say expensive watches. I love watches.
Yeah.
So I'm not pointing the finger. I'm talking about myself as well.
Yeah.
So I said watches as
Play it
well.
safe.
Play it safe. Yeah.
Yeah. So cars, I think is a big one. And my wife and I, we both paid off ours, and I'm refusing to trade mine in and upgrade. And I I feel like the students kind of make fun of my car at school, but you
Mhm.
know what? It's paid for. I don't have to worry about car payments, interest, all that stuff. So I guess jokes on them.
That's
But
right. The best kind of car is the one that's paid for.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, what do you love to learn about in your free time?
Man, and I hate to seem guilty or not guilty, but geeky, but learning about myself and how we as individuals think. I'm an instructor by trade, by passion, and I teach of less of what to think, but more of how to think.
Hmm.
So, how as we humans interact with each other, with groupthink, how do we try to rationalize our thoughts when we don't want to be wrong because it's human nature, and then how do we lead through that? So It's always self-discovery, right? Always
Yeah.
figuring out something about ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. Final question for you. This is the tough one.
Uh-oh. I
It's,
thought the other four were tough.
it's become a favorite here on the show. Dinner for three. Three historical figures who are no longer with us. Who do you break bread with?
Oh, wow. Wow. Colin Powell,
Okay.
definitely is on
That's
that
a good one.
list.
Yeah.
Um, Man, that's very difficult. I'm gonna throw something out there just so we don't have 45 minutes of me trying to pick
Oh,
the
I,
best person.
I edit all the silence to where it's going to sound like
Oh,
you
okay,
both.
perfect,
Yeah.
man. I really feeling the pressure too. I was like, man, I got three, and I have to choose. Oh man, but they have to be deceased, is what you're saying?
Yeah. No longer with us.
Okay, Muhammad Ali.
Colin Powell, Muhammad Ali. It's a good start.
Yeah. Hmm. Say Roosevelt.
Okay. Yeah. That's a solid lineup to dine with right there. Got a little bit of the entertainment with Ali.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The common thread is social understanding, right?
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
all three. Give up your championship belt uh, for a cause you believe in, and
Hmm.
then also be an advocate for a movement and standing up to the government for that. And it sounds strange coming from a military guy. Colin Powell, understanding how to be within the government, lead within, and set the example, but be true to himself, right? That's an officer in Vietnam, lieutenant in Vietnam. And then the country as a whole, just a different cultural, economic, and war issues and concerns that Roosevelt had to go through and how he led through that.
Yeah. All right. Solid group right there. You survived the rapid fire
Oh
quiz.
man, I made it.
You
Okay.
made it. So
Yeah.
that was the hard part. Now the easy part. We're just gonna be talking about you. So here your upbringings. Chattanooga, Tennessee. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What was young Buster's childhood like?
Yeah, I would say it's compare and contrast, and I mentioned I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I grew up in the West Side projects, right? So anyone's been to scenic Chattanooga, Tennessee, beautiful downtown, right next to the river, Lookout Mountain, but right on the other side of the highway of scenic downtown in the convention center, it's notorious West Side projects, a lot of violence, a lot of crime. So that's where I'm from that side of the railroad track or highway, if you will. But I also spent 1 to 2 weekends a month with my grandfather, who lived in suburbs, right? And so just seeing that compare and contrast between those two worlds definitely helped shape my worldview. But yeah,
What were some of your aspirations growing up?
as a kid, really didn't have any. From kids, just playing, having fun with your people that you live with. So I think that was one thing I noticed as an adult now. Uh, your environment sets the conditions of what you think you can be, right?
Yeah.
What you see is what you say, hey, I want to do that. It's not like a 7 year old, 8 year old reads a book and say, hey, I want to be a physicist,
Yeah.
right? They see physicists or doctors or whatever X is in their environment. So, being in the West Side projects, um, I would say void of a lot of things to say, what do I want to be when I grow up? Not saying that everyone there is bad. I'm saying that's just a condition of the environment.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What when did the military kind of come into play for you? When was it like, you know what? I think I'm ready to raise my right hand.
Yeah. So, lived in the inner city, being the majority minority, meaning all black school, um, and the culture within that. And my mom got remarried around my 8th grade year. So we went from Chattanooga, Tennessee to a little town called Jasper,
Hmm.
about 3,600 people, one red light, rural Tennessee, right? Right outside of Chattanooga, but far enough to be its own world. So went from being the majority minority to being the minority minority. So from an all black school to all white school. Um, there, my stepbrother, he was in the National Guard. So had a hint of about the military. Goes back to my statement before. You don't think about things until you're exposed to them, right? And so, growing up in school, wasn't the best student, not because I was slow, I just didn't care. I didn't want to work at the foundry that everyone else worked at, and look forward to a bass boat and a pickup truck every few years. I want to do something different.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, I see this commercial. I got this Marine fighting dragons with fire swords, right? I know fire swords don't exist, and I know dragons don't exist, but that looks pretty cool. So I say, okay, I'm going to do that. So I delay entry into the Marine Corps.
Oh wow. Okay, well, to back up just a little bit, you mentioned going from like West Side projects over to moving to Jasper, going from an all black school to an all white school. You
Yeah,
mentioned diversity, equity, inclusion earlier. What were some of the struggles you had to deal with? Because I'm assuming this is what, early 90s?
yeah, early
A
'90s.
little bit different
Just
time.
Yeah, different time. I'll say on both sides, my optic view, right? Those echo chambers are very different. So, you grew up in a certain environment and people have their assumptions and their thoughts about the other people, right? And
Hmm.
what they think, what they value, and how they look at, us. And then going to the rural area, same myopic view. Hey, this is what we know and it's right, and that's it because it's what I have in my life, and then casting that. So as a young kid, again, at the time we didn't understand that, but as a young kid, being able to compare and contrast, and also not only see the differences but see the similarities between two different worlds.
Yeah.
And I have since applied that to my leadership thought. As far as discernment, discernment is how well do we judge? Well, how sharp are our perceptions? And I often say discernment comes from the details and the differences, right? So how well you know something, the granularity of that, but then also what's the differences, and more like than not. So
Yeah, that discernment's huge.
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
a lot of times people speak or act and don't factor that into things. So you entered the delayed entry program into the Marines.
Correct.
And
Correct.
when did you officially join?
So on my paperwork, 95, if you will. But at some point before I signed the away my life to Marine Corps, I got a hold of, or the Air Force got a hold of me. And I was just an overweight staff sergeant outside the Depth Center, smoking a cigarette as
Yeah.
I go talk to Marine Corps. And he goes, "Hey, he's out, but why you want to join the Marine Corps?" And gave all my answers. And he's like, "Man, you can do that in the Air Force." I'm like, "Air Force? Yeah, right." He's like,
Yeah.
"No, no, no. We have this thing called TACP and CCT and pararescue." I was like, "Oh," he popped in this video. I'm like, sold. So yeah.
So it had something better than a dragon.
Yeah, something better than dragons, actually tangible, right? So the long round to answer your question, September 1996 is my official service date.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
September 90, so September 96. That was like what, Batman and Robin was probably really big around then.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I worked at McDonald's too all throughout high school, so I remember the Batman and Robin cups.
Oh, the
Back
little
when.
glass, the little ice
Yeah,
ones.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When McDonald's pair with movies, and
Yep.
you go get a Happy Meal, and you get this toy or this cup. Yeah, so
I remember those. Yeah, the little Mr. Freeze cups.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
absolutely.
All right. Nerding out a little bit here, but yeah.
Mm-hmm,
Uh,
mm-hmm.
so you joined in 96. What were some of the like early struggles you had, like early in, because even myself, I look back early in my career and I'm like, man, if I could have a mulligan for that moment, what were some of the early struggles you had?
Yeah, in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I would say this. I'll caveat with this. I was very fortunate to have a whole load of intrusive leaders,
Wow.
and not intrusive leaders from a bad way. From,
Yeah, yeah.
hey man, we're gonna make sure you're squared away. We're gonna take care of you and put you on the right path. So not to say I didn't mess up. I messed up plenty, but I had some guys to correct me very quickly. Um, I give a first mulligan, but I was able to correct this, not apply myself, right? So I'm in the military. I decided to join the Air Force. I said, hey, let me go to this exclusive organization called TACP. I want to try for that. Jump out of planes and call airstrikes and put warheads on foreheads and
Mm-hmm.
try for that. Made that selection, and so now I'm in Germany and I'm just coasting. Like, hey, I'm good to go. I made it. We have this thing called TACP competition worldwide. I'm finishing bottom of the list and everything. Because hey, I'm a young guy, supposed to. These guys are more senior.
Yeah.
But one of my colleagues who I went to happened to go to basic training and TACP school with, and we happened to be in Germany together. And he's finishing like number one, number two across the board. I'm like, we've been in the same time. What is going on? It's about application, right? How hard are you grinding? He's in the books, he's studying, he's hitting hard. And that was my first aha moment on the military. Is like, hey man, this thing's what I make it. I can be mediocre if I want to, or I can achieve something. And that was my catalyst, Nick Dopago, my catalyst to looking at Nick and say, hey man, if he can do it, I can do it. And that changed my trajectory to, later on become a command chief and all the other stuff I was able to do
Yeah.
within the military.
I always like to ask this question. You're talking about great leaders. How do you define leadership?
Yeah, and we talked about earlier about leadership. Overused word. A lot of people talk and speak and have social media about leadership, and they have never led before, and or poor leaders at best, right?
I know some authors. There's so many people out there right now that I have this conversation about. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I hate that. And I call them snake oil salesmen, but we get over to that a little bit later. But leadership. The definition is how do you get people to do something that's not necessarily in your best interest,
Mm,
right? And so,
yeah,
how do you relate to people? Not by do, as I say, because that's the weakest form of leadership is direction.
100%.
But yeah, but hey, this is what we need to do and why, and not smoke and mirrors and trying to trick people. Is being very honest, very candid, and say, hey, we're in this together, not you're doing this by yourself. So I define leadership as having people to want to follow you based on the example that you set. And I often say people can question what you say, they can question what you write, but they cannot question what you do. That's fact.
Yeah.
So what you do is fact and solid. So they'll follow that for sure.
Think of an eye-opening question for people is always: do people follow you because they have to follow you, or they want to follow you? Right.
Exactly, exactly. In my leadership courses, I teach is the right to lead versus the authority to lead. Right. So by my rank, by my position, I have the authority to lead. You will comply because that's what the AFI says. But you have to earn the right to lead, and that's given to you by the people over time. Right. And so, similar to what you're saying, it's the right to lead. That's why I try to earn with every unit or every person.
Yeah, and you came in, as you mentioned, graduated tactical air control, TAC piece specialty specialist course, excuse me. And for our non-military listeners, what exactly does that consist of?
Yeah, I'll give you two bad examples. For the older generation, the movie Clear and Present Danger. You have those two guys in the jungle looking at the Colombian drug cartel home and talking to the aircraft and shooting the laser and blowing up the target, right? The other bad example for a little bit of the younger generation, but Transformers number one, when you had Tyrese out in
Yes.
the desert with this wool beret and it's like 150 degrees out and Air Force T-shirt with that small special operations team, and he's calling in airstrikes with the Autobots, right? So lamest term is it's an Air Force guy that's on the ground with conventional and special operations unit. And what we do, we tie the air and the ground power together, right? So we speak Air Force, we speak Army, we speak Marine, and we maneuver with the ground forces, and then we direct the aircraft or helicopters or artillery where to break people's stuff or make them disappear. So I say put warheads on foreheads.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you rank up as quick as Tyrese?
No, not yeah. I didn't do 3 episodes and or 3 movies in 2 years and became chief master sergeant of the Millennium.
Yeah. He was like a senior airman, like trying to get BTZ the first time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So with that, what were your interactions with other branches out there?
Yeah, I spent more time with the Army than in the Air Force. I joke until I was about say a E7, E8, I was more comfortable with the Army than I was with Air Force.
Really?
TACPs are all assigned to Army units.
Yeah.
We live, breathe, eat, sleep Army, uh, our Army bases. And so we go to
Fort fill in the
PME,
blank.
Fort whatever, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's my culture, right? That's my culture. We deploy with the Army. There's not an Air Force unit that you go with and you're hanging out with Air Force. You're embedded with your Army counterpart, especially with the Special Forces and the Rangers units I've been, assigned to. And so we go to Air Force PME. I'm like, man, I feel out of place on this Air Force base around these Air Force people. So it's kind of weird, right? The identity you have is not the shell that people see. Right?
Yeah.
Uh, But no, I think I forgot the question, but I love being around the Army, and I love identifying with my brothers in arms. But ask that question one more time, and I'll see if I get it right.
Well, I was basically going to follow it up with, we end up, busting each other's chops in different branches. And I've been on some Angels 14 calls, which huge shout out to them. They've been on the podcast a couple of times. But get on there and the Marines are throwing jabs at the Army throwing jabs. Everybody's throwing jabs at the Air Force. But what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about the Army?
If they're not smart, that they are not smart, very smart individuals. And I end up being the mediator between the Air Force and Army. When my Army guys talk bad about the Air Force, I defend the Air Force, and then vice versa. With the Army guys, I tell the Air Force guys, they're doing things that either you can't or won't do, or you're too scared to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before you start talking smack, put some little respect on it, if you will, right?
Yeah, I didn't sign up for that.
Yeah, exactly. And the Army's job is not to protect the Air Force,
Yeah.
right? So learn how to shoot a weapon. That's what I tell the Air Force. But back to the Army, man, some of the most uh, agile thinkers have been the privates and specialists when I was with the Rangers, right? They're young, 19-year-old. I call them kids, but they're not, but they're young, right? 19, 20-year-old, but in combat in Afghanistan and Iraq, and see how they execute the mission based on their training,
Yeah.
right? They didn't rise to the occasion, they fell back to their training. And that's a testament to the staff sergeants and sergeant first class, and see how they operate autonomously without cue or asking for permission. And so I see that leadership within the Army that a lot of people don't see, and I get to see it firsthand. So yeah, I love my Army brethren for real.
Okay. Next question for you. 9/11. I like to ask this because it's crazy to think that it's been 20 plus years since 9/11 took place. And I started to see it teaching Airman Leadership School when I would ask students, like, where were you during 9/11? They're like, I was -2 or whatever. They're like, I wasn't even around, but I can remember it clear as day. Where were you when the events of 9/11 transpired?
Yeah, I was at the PX, not the BX, but the Post Exchange, Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Okay.
Um, I just got back from my second deployment in 2001, probably about 4 years in at the time. Public mouth, maybe 5 years in at the time. Brand new staff sergeant, E5, and came back from Kuwait City, Kuwait, with the deployment, Type B deployment. And I'm still on our 2 week break, that we get from coming back. And I'm hanging around doing a shelf check at the PX, and I'm
Yeah.
walking down the little corridor and see the barber shop with all the windows. And I'm looking in and no one's cutting hair. It's full, but no one's cutting hair, right? It's all the barbers standing there with the clippers in their hand, and the patrons are not getting upset. They're heads up looking at the television. I'm like, what's going on? I peek through the glass and I see the tower's on fire, and I walk in and start hearing what's going on. And at some point, I think the second aircraft hit, and I'm like, whoa, like, okay, we're going to war. I just don't know with who and where, so I'm calling my friends on the old school cell phones we had back then. And I immediately drive to the unit. Most of us drove to the unit, happened to be around the area,
Yeah.
to meet up. No information, of course, but we were all getting excited, if you will, about the potential of going somewhere, and doing something to someone. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. What about yourself?
I was actually in college. I was in
Awesome.
college. I was, I think, a freshman walking around the student like lounge area. It was like this open area with like food and all this stuff. And
College station or student station?
yeah, it was like a student. The bookstore was right there and everything. And I go walking through it, and people seemed they were watching television. They were kind of, distraught. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? But I had a class that I needed to get to, and I didn't have my project turned in. So, or my paper. So I was just beeline to my professor's office. And I walked in his office, and he was already like head of drama and theater. So he was an emotional guy, anyways. But he's just up there with his, he had a lot. I remember he had this little lamp on. It was very dim, and he's just sitting there crying. And I walked in his office, and I was like, I'll come back later. And he's like, no. And he had a little television there on his desk, and he was watching what was happening. He's like, our world has changed forever, forever. And he's like, this is the biggest thing that is going to hit our generation right here. Is is this attack? And I didn't really internalize it at the time. I'm like, what is he talking about? And I started to learn more about it. But yeah, I remember that like it was yesterday. But definitely,
Absolutely.
for our younger audience, I tell them, I'm like, y'all don't understand the heightened sense of patriotism during that time.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody was proud to be an American.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And how did that feel for you in uniform, seeing all that?
Well, my wife, she used to joke. She goes, "Hey, be careful what you ask for." So, as a TAC P, you want to go to war, right? You join a job that is a wartime job, and in peacetime, we are practicing for war. And so, who wants to join a football team and practice but never play a game?
Yeah.
So for years until then, 5 years, like, hey man, I can't wait till the next opportunity. So how naive it may be or self-centered may be, it was like exciting. Like, okay, now I get to unleash all the training that I've had the last
Yeah.
several years and put into practical application, and see how good I really am. But also, I was very proud, one, to be an American, but also maybe a elitist statement, but be proud enough to say, hey, one of the first Americans to do something on behalf of our nation to those who inflicted the pain on us. So
Yeah.
very proud point in my life where 9/11 happened. I was part of some elite guys who was able to give some act right, if you will, to some individuals in 2001.
Yeah, and I always like to hear it from a military perspective because most people that I talk to about this either weren't in the military, they were working somewhere, they were in school. So, really good to get that insight. And looking at some of these assignments you had, I mean, you've Washington, Korea, Germany, Hawaii, Texas. Uh, to pause on the deployment stuff for a second, what was your favorite assignment you had?
Man, I don't have one because they're all different, based on what they did for me at my point in my life. But
Yeah.
I'll run down a couple of things as far as perspective of the world is my first assignment to Germany. I will say
Yes.
North Carolina, Fort Bragg is really understanding to be a military member and refine my skills and becoming an NCO and having to meet my wife there. And I was at the Imperial 14th ASOS, so that's one of the premier conventional TACP units, and that launched my career to, SOF and Special Forces and Rangers and so forth. And so I'll say the proudest, without going through all the litany of everything, I'll say the proudest probably my time at Fort Bragg and Fort Lewis. Fort Bragg in 2001, I was fortunate enough to invade Afghanistan in November, December 2001 with
Mm.
ODA 542, and then came back in 2002, PCS to Fort Lewis, 2nd Ranger Battalion, Alpha Company. And I spent '02 to '07, '08 timeframe with the Rangers and everything we did with the invasion of Iraq and multiple Iraq and Afghanistan tours. So I'll say those two are most proud uh, assignments based on doing what the military is supposed to do and be a deterrence to others.
Do you ever think you would go from passing out Mr. Freeze cups to being TAC P invading Iraq?
No clue, right? Little kid from the projects
Yeah.
where people are not supposed to be anything, and then going to rural Tennessee where people there are also underrepresented and marginalized for different reasons, and flipping burgers at McDonald's to being American with a team, invading Iraq and Afghanistan for our nation's cause. I have no clue, could not imagine that, but
Yeah.
here I am, right?
Yeah. And 8 deployments, 6 of them were combat. That had to be a huge chunk of your career was on deployments alone. That was what do you know off the top of your head, like the total amount that you were deployed versus on station?
Yeah, no, I don't. I will say two things. Man, my deployment count for TACPs and SOFs is low. We have guys with, uh, 10, 13, 16 deployments, back to
Wow.
back to back, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, all great Americans. And so, my path a little bit different where they say, hey, we need you to come back to the big Air Force and lead. And so they took me out of special operations for a while, allowing my track to be a little bit different. But I have my brothers who, maybe not achieve the rank or the positions, but not because they weren't capable. They chose to stay in those special mission units. And the Air Force says, okay, if you do that, we're not going to promote you. But they're doing the mission, for years after I left, So hats off to them for sure.
What do you think of that? Because there's still talk of that even today of, different paths, different tracks for people to go in terms of we're going to send you down a leadership path, or I want to be more technically savvy, or I want to be more hands on. What do you think of that option?
Both is needed. It's like the false argument
Yeah.
between trade schools and college.
Yep.
It's stupid to say that we need all trade school people or all college people. We need both,
Yeah.
right? And so get on a little tangent about people complaining about, hey, this education thing is not needed, but they're complaining on the very social media websites designed by educated people.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yep.
Your stocks, the way you invest money, everything is based on education. So training, prepare for the known, education, preparing for the unknown. So we need both. We need plumbers and electricians, but also people who are versed in higher learning. Back to the argument of in the Air Force or any military branch, we need both. We need those who have done the mission, have completed the work to then ascend to leadership positions. Because if you don't, we'll have people who only wanted the leadership path making decisions that they're not necessarily qualified to make.
Yeah.
But we also need those individuals to stay within those special mission units to do the work on the ground, to make sure they lead from internally to make sure that, hey, what guys and gals need is taken care of. So we need both. It's like a false choice right there to say which one is more important. We need both those things.
Yeah. Looking back on your deployments, and I mean, and crazy what all you were doing with TAC P, special ops. What was the lowest moment during one of those deployments, and then what was the most rewarding piece that you're looking back on?
Many low moments
Yeah.
and many rewarded moments, but I would say probably one of the lowest moments of this question, like what the hell am I doing? In 2001, 2002, in an undisclosed location with a SF team, total three of us doing special reconnaissance, myself and two special forces Green Berets, and we're summoning this mountain, and it's not the nature trail at Mount Rainier,
Right, right,
uh,
right.
so this is the Himalaya mountains in Afghanistan, tying into Mount Everest, right? That peak where you have 14,000 foot ridge lines, not peaks but whole ridge lines, and
Yep.
we're about 10,000 feet, and we're trying to get to the summit the best way we know how with outdated maps. 1 to 100 people who read maps know that's not very detailed, and we're on the side of this cliff, like trying to make it, and we have to be at a certain location at a certain time. We can't turn around. It's like, hey man, we gotta skim you through this sketchy drop off and try not to fall. And literally with 90-pound rucksacks on, weighing us back, we're face and chest and thighs and everything. Yes, as close to the mountain as you can, and we're greater than 45-degree lean angle, on this mountainside, and we're trying to, jab our boots into this rock that's very brittle and breaking off, and kind of slide, not walk, but slide at an angle to get across this one section to pick up this path. And you look down, and it's a 3, 4, 500 foot drop.
Yeah, you
Like,
sneeze or something.
yeah, you're done.
Yeah.
Good news is, the fall is not going to kill you. It's the sudden stop at the end. So if you do fall, it's not going to be maybe a long fall, but not a long death. You're dead. But the lowest moment, I'm thinking like, hey man, I'm good with being in firefights and jumping out of planes and doing my job, but this is BS. Like, yeah. So a low moment, like, what? How did I end up here, right? And
Yeah.
and this is how we're going to go out. We're all, the three of us, all cussing as we're going through, like, dude, this is ridiculous. So definitely a low moment, something that's out of your control, and that fear factor. Again, to a firefight, I think I can best you, but I can't best gravity, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but a high moment has nothing to do with combat. It's as a command chief, being able to solve problem sets for and remove barriers for individuals, right? When you're able to achieve E9, but also there's some extra respect for whatever reason that comes with being a command chief, E9, and I could pick up the phone and call people at the Pentagon or call people at AFPC, our Air Force HR, say, hey man, this is what I'm seeing and why. How can we fix this? And not many people will tell you no. So that's one of my most proudest moments, to be able to cut through the bureaucracy and help individuals that's going to change their lives or help their families.
Yeah. I was talking to someone who had made chief, and they were like, that you and I know very well. And they were like, man, it's crazy. As a master sergeant or senior, I would call somebody and I'd be like, hey, I need help with this person. And I would have to answer all kinds of questions. And then he's like, now I call and I'm like, hey, this is Chief such and such. And they're like, got it. No
On it.
questions. he's
On
like,
it.
he's like, man, this thing is amazing. This is great. Um,
Absolutely.
and those leadership positions, I'm sure you saw a lot of issues in terms of uh, real life issues that people were going through, whether it's everyday struggles like divorce, separation, you name it, financial issues. I'm sure since you joined in 96 up until when you got out after 26 years, you saw a significant spike in mental health awareness. What was mental health? What was that word even? I guess what was the context behind it in 1996 versus when you're retiring? And I'm assuming it's right around the pandemic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to look at the culture I came from, TACP. Our motto still to this day is the strong will stand and the weak will fall by the wayside.
Yeah,
That's not very inclusive to, hey man, if you're struggling, let me know. If
get
you
some
need some
help. Yeah,
help, right? That's not the culture. The strong will stand and the weak will fall by the wayside. So that's a type P. You don't want to be weak, right? So that's a subculture within the culture of the military at the time. No one's talking about mental health. You crazy. What's wrong with you? Also the stigma, hey, you're gonna lose your security clearance. You're gonna be taken off this special mission unit. So from my point of view, mental health was not a thing. And if it was, not a thing to tout. It was a thing underneath the surface. We know people who had drinking problems, had family problems, and marital and kids and the whole 9 yards. But hey, man, suck it up, man, handle your shit, right? And that's what people, talk about. To now, hey, man, I think this may be a little bit of overcorrection. It's probably controversial what I say, but please remind me to explain a little bit later. But to now, it's like, hey, man, we need people to come get seen. And so myself, I've been seeing mental health since I think '05. I
mm-hmm.
went to my first mental health appointment and I quit it because the person was pissed me off. A little PSA for those of us who are leaders: make sure your mental health professionals are paired with the right individuals. I had a
Huge.
non-combat stress mental health person. They're dealing with other things with I don't know, baby stress. Not marginalizing that, but being a mom or being depressed because of eating habits. That those are real things, but it wasn't what I needed as a guy who's suffering from combat stress. And so you need to pair those two individuals to make sure it works. So I quit it the first time and picked it up. To fast forward as a command chief, I'm seeing mental health, and the mental health team's like, hey, chief, everyone knows you on base, so you can come in the back door so no one knows you coming in. I was like, no, time out. We talk about being transparent. We talk about going to see your mental health specialist. I need to come through the front door, sit in the lobby with everyone else, and be an example. And I will tell you, I've had countless number of airmen say either I heard or I saw you in mental health, and
Yeah,
now I'm going or I'm okay to go. I'm not stigmatized. I don't feel like I'll be stigmatized by doing that. So we have to lead by example. That's number one. But number two, back to the statement I said, we see an uptick in mental health visits, but in my opinion, I'm not a psychologist or psychologist or psychiatrist, but too many people are going for the wrong reasons. And I equate it to this: there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. If we're running 10 miles or we're going to do a 12-mile rucksack with 110 pounds, you're going to hurt. It's supposed to hurt. That's the whole point of it.
mm-hmm.
You're going to hurt your knees, your back. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be out of breath. The shoulder straps are going to dig into your neck. It's going to be painful. That's okay. That's part of life. But if you tear a ligament or ACL, or tear a muscle, you fracture your bone, or something happens where you fall down and you break something, that's an injury. So hurting is okay. That's life.
Yeah,
Injuries when the guy gets seen. So I would equate that to the mental aspect. We have a lot of hurting people who think they're injured, and
yeah.
it's taking up the bandwidth for people who really are injured that needs to be seen. Again, that's Robert Zackery's opinion.
Well, yeah, and it's even tough to get seen. It's not as easy as hey, I want to go to mental health. They got a slot open for me. There's
Yeah.
going to be availability and all that. And like you said, the getting the right fit with the right provider is huge. And that's with a chaplain. That's with mental health. That's with any of those agencies. I went and talked to a chaplain one time, and it was not the right fit, not the
Yeah.
right fit at all. And for the longest time, I was a little immature in my mindset, and I was no, I'm not going to advocate for somebody to go to the chaplain. Uh,
Hmm.
and I had that conversation with someone, and they said, "Well, I had a great experience. Maybe it just wasn't the right fit for you, and it wasn't."
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, right fit is huge. And then, what do you think the military could do to help normalize mental health and going and getting seen and uh, taking care of yourself, especially
Yeah,
with
it's
some of those subcultures like you talked about?
yeah, conversations, man. The problems are not going to be solved by the institution. The institution needs to support it, but the individuals are going to solve these problem sets. So it's your peer group. So hey, man, you need to reach out to those around you. Have those type of conversations. It's very difficult too. I'm not pointing fingers at the leadership in the Air Force or any large organization. You do what's best, but that one person at the top cannot, effectively manage or secure or promote what needs to happen for all, say, 650 individuals, like within the Air Force, 650,000 individuals. So the institution has to support it, but the individuals are small circles. That's where benefit, that's where traction for success is going to come from. So we need to promote that, but also have honest talk. Like I just said before, there's a lot of people are hurting. Need to suck it up.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are injured who are not being seen. And they're, unfortunately, doing things like killing themselves, right? And so, that's very unfortunate. And, I was at a conversation with another buddy of mine too. He's like, hey, man, one of our colleagues, or not a colleague of mine, but a colleague of his, killed himself. And he's like, hey, man, which I agree with this statement. He goes, hey, man, life is hard, but life is harder now for your wife and two kids who don't have a father.
Yeah.
And so people don't want to say that either. Like, hey, suicide is very sensitive. Yeah, I'm not saying the guy wasn't hurting, but guess what's happened to his family now? So we got to talk about those things. The selfish nature of suicide, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's another one too that kind of falls into that like crucial conversations category where it's how do we sit down and talk about these things? What do you think about with suicide when people say things such as, "Oh, don't mention that to them. You don't want to plant that seed in their head."
No, you can't plant something that's always going to be there or already is there. And if someone is not suicidal, saying that it's not going to make them suicidal,
Yeah.
right? And so it's quite the opposite. When you think people may hurt themselves, ask them directly, hey, dude, or hey, gal, are you going to kill yourself? I mean, just that direct. We have these conversations. So
Yep.
when they offend them, I'd rather offend someone for them or others, they are no longer with us because, I didn't have those tough conversations with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And suicide to me, I mean, mental health, suicide, kind of coupled together. It's really scary when you think about it because you can be a great leader, great leader, and someone can just choose not to open up about whatever issues it is they're going through. And you see it all the time. You read stuff. I mean, even look at Twitch recently. What happened with him? Like
Yeah.
no one saw that coming. No
Yeah.
one saw that coming. So it really is scary as a parent, as a leader. And like you said, you got to have those conversations. And my daughter recently had some people that she's close to. They had committed suicide, and my wife and I both sat her down and like had a legit like unfiltered. Let's have a conversation and be real right here about this because I'm not gonna like you said we don't want to offend or hurt people, but I would much rather you be here and be pissed off with me than to not be here at all. So
Absolutely. Saw a
yeah,
meme that said, this is what suicide looked like, and had a picture of, Kurt Cobain with his success and Anthony Bourdain from, Parts Unknown, the host that travel around the
chef.
world. And
Yeah,
yeah, and smiling, and Robin Williams, and all these guys who seem happy on the outside and on the inside, wasting away. And I had a good friend of mine who I went to TAC P school with. Call him Hot Dog. His other call sign and nickname was Hollywood. But we had a mutual friend, Army Lieutenant. was a enlisted, became a lieutenant later on, but Hot Dog and this sergeant at the time served in combat 2 or 3 times. That sergeant received 3 Purple Hearts over 4 years. Um, became an LT because he says being a sergeant is too dangerous, so let me be a lieutenant in the army instead. And we meet up in Hawaii, and we discussed that we both knew Hot Dog. And fast forward the story, the guy who's done multiple combat deployments, been shot and or fragged from explosives 3 different times, dies in a jeeping accident in Hawaii on North Shore. So, I message Hot Dog and said, "Hey, man, did you hear about LT Holbrook?" And he says, "I did." I said, "Yeah, man, sorry for he passed away." He goes, "Yeah, I know." And that's the last thing he said. All our other conversations, Hot Dogs have, large text of us
Yeah.
going back and forth. And I got a phone call the next day that said, "Hey, man, did you hear what happened? Like, hear what happened? What he talked about? Hot Dog killed himself." Right. So I had no clue that the loss of, a guy that was in combat with, that he felt guilty that this guy on the other side of the, globe in Hawaii killed or was killed. We had that emotional attachment to someone he served in combat with, to the point where he, killed himself and left his wife and 2 kids behind.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
very, very complex and complicated conversation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. What do you think is something we could do to improve awareness? And I hate to use that term awareness because I think that gets overused a lot as well. But what about post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yeah, I think we have awareness of it. Um, it's back to the thing, though. The right people. There's a lot of people using it, which arguably some of them are not the right people. And then we have the people who need it are not
Yeah.
seeking it out. So I wish I knew the answer to that would solve all problems. I have no clue. I think at the end of the day, and maybe this is a pessimistic way of looking at it. At the end of the day, people are going to do what they want to do, for good or bad reasons.
You can only do so much.
Yeah, for good or bad reasons, people are going to make decisions, and we try to reach out, but we can't control it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, someone proves me wrong.
Yeah, and it's tough because I mean, anytime you hear something like that, what's one of the first things people say is, "I could have done more. I should have done more. I should have picked. If I just would have picked up the phone, I would have altered the rest of the universe. If I would have
Right.
replied back with something else." So,
But if I just knew the numbers for the lottery,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, no, exactly,
you don't
exactly.
know.
Speaking of mental health and everything, what about the pandemic? Like, what was your world like when March of 2020 rolled around and you're kind of at the tail end of your military career? Like, how did that, you know, equate into your career and kind of the trajectory you were going into?
Also, still busy. During the pandemic, a lot of people were not going to work. Teleworking, or television, as I
Pajamas.
call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm television. I mean teleworking. But I was a command chief of a base, right? And so
Oh,
myself and the wing commander, we're going into the office every day because the mission have to continue. We were in charge of pilot training. We were 1/4 of the pilot training bases for the Air Force, but we produce 1/3 of the aviators of the Air Force, and also the largest pilot training base in the DoD and the world. So our mission cannot stop. So it was less of woe is me, look at the pandemic, I can't go anywhere, but more so, how can we continue to create, develop, train pilots, but also keep them safe while they're in the cockpit and we're dealing with a disease or a virus that we don't know all the facts of. And oh, by the way, as a command chief, you have everyone from the 3-day-old newborn baby at the CDC to the 93-year-old grandfather or grandmother dependent on your base. And how do you make decisions for a generational gap of 93 years? And everyone has every different political opinion, and everyone's a scientist and a lawyer, except no one went to school to become a science or a lawyer, but
oh
everyone
yeah.
has their opinions, right?
That
And
article on
so
Twitter was great though.
yeah, it's like, yeah, I saw this on Facebook, so now therefore I'm an expert. And And so I really didn't have the time to say, hey, man, this is, once in a lifetime. This is weird. Let me go, watch Matlock or Colombo during the day. I'll show them to work with the wing commander. And we're trying to figure this out.
Yeah. What do you think is something we learned about ourselves as an Air Force during the pandemic?
A lot of people are not committed to the mission, regardless of your political opinion on the vaccine. When you did this and said, I support defending the Constitution, obey all orders, right? Lawful orders. But then I don't agree politically with this virus or sorry, this vaccine. I think it was telling that a lot of people are not in the military for what they say they are in the military for.
Mhm.
And so if you think you have again, I'm not saying people's opinion are wrong or right. I'm saying from the point of view, when you agree to do something, you should follow through. And so now we have people say, well, I don't want to do that. No, that's what you need to do. Maybe the rules will change later on, but the rules now is this is what you need to do. So now question, if I tell you or say you have to go overseas and maybe fight the next war, will you have the same opinion of, hey, I don't want to do that, So uh, I know for a lot of our civilian audiences, like, hey, everyone gets a choice, and that's not the same in the military. When you join the military, you choose to give up certain freedoms, and that's known going in. So it's a different standard, a different accountability level for our military members. But that was very eye opening to me.
Yeah, I think I heard it when the shots became mandatory. When
Yeah,
COVID vaccinations became mandatory, and people were they were given a lot of pushback with that. And a lot of
yeah,
times it was political views and
yeah,
they've read.
yeah. Not making a judgment on if you should have political views or if your political views are right or wrong. I'm saying at the end of the day, you need to execute,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm going to send you overseas to hopefully not take a bullet in the face, but someone's maybe shooting at you. That's not good for your health either. But I still need you to go, right? So yeah, it's just I was surprised at the amount of people who felt that, uh, quite frankly, their opinions matter as a military member.
Yeah. I was told early in my career, your personal views and your political or your professional views, if they got into an arm wrestling contest, Air Force wins every single time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you have a discrepancy with that, that's fine. Exit stage left.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not saying you have to be in the military. I'm saying while you in the uniform, this is what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
you got to have that mature conversation. You can't have the both best of both worlds. I want the benefits and the prestige and everything that comes with being security, that comes with being military, but then pick and choose what rules I want to follow. It doesn't work that way.
When did you actually retire from the military? What was your date?
1 March 2023. So a whole whopping what 3 weeks, 6 weeks from now.
That beard's
Something like
fresh.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
What?
had to trim down a little bit.
So 26 years. What made you decide like now it's time to tap out?
Yeah, for a guy who's going to do 4 years and get out, everything else has been extra credit, right? And so I just enjoyed the mission. I enjoyed what I was doing and who I was doing it with. And at the time, at the 19-year mark, a lot of things came to head. I was like, okay. I always tell my wife, hey, 20 years, we'll let's just make it to 20 years and we'll punch. And at the 19-year mark, a couple of things happened. We were stationed in Hawaii, had the opportunity to stay in Hawaii longer. So we love the location. I love the job. I was a squadron chief, senior enlisted leader for the organization, which was a Type P unit. I'm jumping free fall from 13,000 feet with my guys, and I'm shooting weapons. I'm calling airstrikes, and I get to lead an organization that are full of great Americans and war fighters. I was like, why would I leave this now to
Yeah.
stay a little bit longer? And oh, by the way, the Air Force says we need more TAC P. So although you are at 19 years, this is unheard of, by the way, we're going to give you a bonus if you stay over 20. Hmm, that sounds good. Sign me up, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so everything lined up to
Those
say, hey,
bonuses will get you too.
oh, they will, yeah, yeah. Hey, you want 120K? I was going to stay in anyway, but yes, I would like 120K
Yeah.
now. But yes, please, and thank you.
I was guilty of that too. They got me with one of those before. And you decide to get out, and did you get to that point where you're like, wow, now I gotta decide what's next? Or did you kind of already have it set?
Yes and no. So I was going to retire out of Laughlin Air Force Base in Texas as command chief and move to Tampa, Florida. We always loved Tampa for various reasons. And I got some couple of phone calls from key leaders in the Air Force and like, hey, something's wrong. I was like, no, how about you come up here and work with me? I said, I'd love to, but I'll pass. I hate doing paperwork, so I'll suck at doing Pentagon paperwork. But thank you. And then the senior listed leader, the command CCEL for SOCOM, who I know, was like, hey, are you getting out? Like, yeah. He goes, how about you come back home to Special Operations Command headquarters? Home figuratively as a special operator, but also home. I heard you moving to Tampa. We'll PCS you to Tampa. Give me a year and a half, 2 years. Do these things for me at the headquarters, and then you can transition out. Sounds like a win-win. And the catalyst of getting out was because I want my son to be at one high school, and so
Yep.
we moved to Tampa. His middle of his eighth grade year, and so he's doing well. And while I was here at Special Operations Command headquarters, because of the portfolio I was working with, and my other 24 years previously of experience, I said, "Hey, I want to get into leadership development and teaching and instructing, and help humans be better humans." Humbly saying that,
Yeah.
yeah. So I kind of stumbled into it.
You're talking about family. Talk to non-military people out there about how important and how powerful having a good support system in terms of your family is. Because I told someone on a podcast a while back, I said, they were like, do y'all like being thanked for your service? And I'm like, you need to be thanking our kids and our spouses. When I said, do that next time you see a service member, I said, because they're the unsung heroes. So talk about, you know, as a military member, how important that support system is.
Absolutely. We have people who worry when they go to their 8-hour shift at whatever job what their spouse is doing. Think about a 8-month deployment.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say, "Hey, what's the key to success in the Air Force or as a leader?" And my opinion is who you marry and who you have kids with, and hopefully that's the same person.
Yeah.
It's the most important decision you make in your professional life, because when you're having a rough day and you need to push a little bit further, or you have to commit to that job, whether you catch hell at home or be supported at home makes all the difference.
100%.
Makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Uh, it's the household being taken care of. And it's not a chauvinist statement. In the military, somebody has to be lead. And if your spouse, whether you're male or female, is following you around the world, around the country, every 3 years, picking up and moving, the military member's career priority.
Yeah.
So will that spouse support you, number one? So not only stay with you, but not give you hell the whole time. Support you, take care of the household, raise the kids, make sure finances are good. When you deploy, you're not worried about what's happening at home. That is the importance of a strong spouse, and also to raise healthy kids who also are going through their own stress every time mom and dad leaves. Uh, and the spouse themselves going through stress every time, especially for the career fields I've been in, or the career field I've been in, where, we are the ones kicking in the doors and meeting the enemy face to face. That's stressful for those spouses and those kids. So, supremely important. It's one of those things where you can talk about it, but you have to be about it. I can try to explain it,
Yeah.
but until you're in those positions, it'd be very difficult to really understand how important military spouses and kids are.
Yeah. I like to tell non-military people, I'm like, imagine packing up your entire house every 4 years. And that sometimes is a long assignment, but packing up your house, moving. I mean, just looking at your bio, all the assignments that you had to have some broken and missing items
Absolutely.
along the way. But yeah, and then your spouse has had my wife always talks about it. She's like, I'm ready to eventually get to the point where we can settle down because her career, it's start over. Next place we go to, we're about to go to California, and it's going to be start over when we get there as well. And kids going to new schools, and they really are. I think family is the unsung heroes that, like I said, you see them out and about, give them some love. What
Yeah,
about
my wife
young?
is the. I was going to say my wife too is trifecta. So she was a military brat,
Okay,
served in the military, and a military spouse.
how long did she serve?
Only 4 years,
Four
but
years.
four
Okay,
years more than most 99% of all Americans, right?
everybody comes in wanting to do four.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's going to do four and out.
And so Marine Corps brat, joined the Army, and
Oh,
that's at the
wow.
time where the Army paid for your college. So, college graduate, and if you did 4 years enlisted in the Army, they'll pay for your school. So, she did that, and then married to Air Force dude.
Hit me a joint out. This is a joint
Yeah,
spouse right there.
my spouse, right? Household six. And so, and so with that, there's respect with that. But he's like, hey, you know what? I've been moving on my life. It's time to settle down somewhere. So, obviously, she had a boat. Like literally all her life, she's been moving. So, okay, let's put some roots down. So now we can get good furniture because we know in 2 years we're not going to move and someone's going to break it. And all the things you don't think about when you're not moving every 40, 8 months to
Yeah.
on a long game, but mostly 24 months at a time.
Yeah. Okay. And what about young people joining the military? Someone who is listening to this, they're maybe in that little, 1 to 4 month window or 4 year window. They may be on the fence about joining. What advice would you give after 26 years of experience to new or young military members?
Back to the discernment piece. I don't believe in hyping people up. Give them information, educate them, give them perspective. And so the military is transactional. Uh, Very controversial to some people when I say the military is not about apple pie and bald eagles and freedom. The military is a deterrent to other nations to protect our way of life
Yeah.
and what we think is valuable. So, with that being said, please understand and believe that the military will use you, not in a poor way. So, it won't be anti recruiting. The military will use you, but we also offer benefits as well. So,
Okay.
understanding what you're getting to, but take full advantage as you commit to the military, take full advantage of what the military offers you. And so, it could be a catalyst for great things. Again, a kid from West Side Projects to rural Tennessee, and master's degree paid for by the Air Force. I've been to 52 countries. I've purchased several houses, throughout my time and all over the nation. Would live very comfortably. So the military can help you, uh, but also you got to take advantage. And I say take advantage of those things and opportunities that you have. So commit, crush it, do well,
Yeah.
but don't be mistaken that it's about apple pies and bald eagles and buy gold too, because this one guy says so. It's the whole persona. If you like freedom, buy gold. It's just so don't be fooled, right? Be clear eyed on what this is about. So please reenlist,
Yeah.
but know why you're enlisting.
I heard a commander say that the military was, he said, everybody's going to get divorced while they're in the military. Everybody. And he's like, you'd have the best marriage in the world. You're going to get divorced, and you're going to get divorced from the Air Force because you can get in and after 4 years go like, you know what, this just isn't working out. Let's go our separate ways. Or you can get in, you can treat her good. She will treat you good as well. Y'all going to have some rocky moments, and there's going to be moments where you're like, I don't like you right now. And she doesn't, you feel like she doesn't like you. But you can get to 20 some years and be like, you know what? We got to cut bait and divorce, and you get alimony and all this other great stuff
There you
from it.
go.
But you got to be committed to this relationship for it to get those. But you can get out after 4 and be like, you know what? We decided to go our separate ways, and nobody's gonna be mad at you. But you got to
Absolutely.
understand it's a relationship you're in, and not just the misconception of you go to the recruiter's office and it's, oh, I get education and travel and all this stuff, and I will go home every day at 5 o'clock, and that's not how that works. But yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Um, what kind of person do you want to be 5 years from now?
Wow. Happier.
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 Okay,
I'm
you're
happy
probably at a
now.
high now. You just retired, so
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm doing what I want when I want, and so now the trick is to continue to do what I want, make change in people's lives, where they're allowing me to, and try to spread out my influence,
yeah.
not for self, but influence to help others. Right. So I'll say happier. I love taking my kid to school and picking them up when I can, but also love traveling and work with different organizations as I spread out with my leadership company and helping people through their problem sets. So
So
happier.
talk to us about your leadership company and the strategic leadership company that you're with, the problem solving, all this stuff you're doing. Let our listeners know what post military life has been like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Back in 2017, I started Primer Development Group.
See the hat?
Same as, yeah, see the hat, same as plug, right? PrimerDG.com. But the catalyst is if we can teach people how to think critically under stress when they're extremely hot, extremely cold, raining, wet, hungry, absent from their families. How come we can't do that in an air conditioned climate control building?
It's true.
And what are the principles and the techniques and the lenses and the frameworks to that, and understand themselves. So with academic background, master's study in strategic leadership, undergrad in international relations, leading organizations up to a 5,000, 5,800 person base, to being a special operator, kicking in doors with some of the world's finest. What techniques, procedures, skills can I apply and package to help leaders lead within their environment, which is sometimes uncertain or can be extreme? And so, how you help change people's lives. So that's what I'm doing now with Primary Development Group and consulting, strategic leadership, operation problem solving, culture change, mission driven diversity, equity, inclusion, which is a different flair. It's not about the individuals, about the institution. And so, yeah, that's what I'm doing now, and I love it.
They want to find out more about it. Where can they go?
Yes, PrimerDG, PRIMERDG.com. That's the website. Also on LinkedIn, Facebook, and have also a team of colleagues, fellows, if you will, partners. They call it the Justice League, right? Every hero within the Justice League, they have their own superpower and their own story, but they choose to come together with the Justice League. So I have some squared away, trusted leaders in their own specialty with their own companies, and we come together to provide a solution for our client. And so, yeah.
Okay, we'll have that link in the episode description. What about a book? I mean, all this military experience, command chief, TACP, all these deployments. I mean, you like we mentioned earlier, 9/11 pandemic. When are you going to get you start putting some pen to paper and getting you a book out there?
But you wouldn't believe how many people have asked me that. I've been hesitant for two reasons.
Yeah,
As a special operator, we have what's called a non-disclosure agreement.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so we said, for because of a security clearance and the things we've done and people have done it with and who we've done it for, that for the next 99 years after that, we'll not disclose those things. So I'll have to work around that.
yeah.
Then number two, back to, and maybe it's just short-sighted on my end, but back to those people I said, who talk about leadership, but they're not leaders. I hate to be categorized as another person with a leadership book after finishing the military, and I don't want to be put in that bin. So I guess the only way to do that, go ahead.
You've been a command. You're not Simon Sinek though. You've been a command chief. It's not like you're writing books because it's you have these thoughts. This is you've actually been down and dirty and led people, and you've got the experience. So
I'll think about that. Maybe I'll come out with something.
yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier. There's too many people do all this, and it's just like, oh, they got a degree and they've they can do a TED talk, and everybody on LinkedIn's a CEO now too. So
Yeah, absolutely.
they've got that, and they got a background that looks good on a LinkedIn page, and they're like, yeah, I'm an author now. Here's my 12 leadership philosophies. But you've actually, like I said, been a command chief during a worldwide pandemic, and like you said, hanging off the side of a mountain, looking down at a couple hundred feet. It takes a lot to go through that, and that's I think stuff people are really looking for more so than follow these 7 steps and you'll change your organization.
I appreciate that. I tell you, I'm the sum of uh, 26 years of great leaders kicking me in my ass.
Yeah,
Say, hey, do this and don't do that, and go to this school and stop doing that over there. And so, yeah, maybe I'll do that. I'll look at that and
just
maybe do
change
a
up your
little.
stories. Instead of it be you could make one a paintball story, and instead of something that happened downrange, and
There we go.
playing
I'll
paintball with
take
Brad.
Tampa stand instead. Instead of that place, I'm a Tampa stand.
Yeah, change up the whole scenery of the stories. And
Yeah.
what do you want your legacy to be end of the day when kids, grandkids, people that 90, well, 100 years from now read your book? What do you want them to say about you?
Yeah, I will say first, I have a problem with the word legacy, and the reason why to me is self-centered.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? It's about, hey, what I want people to know about me, and look at I and what I have done. And so within the word of legacy, not in a self-centered way, but what I want the results to be.
Yes.
from my time on earth is life is easier, and we have knowledge and resources that have been gained from grandpa or great grandpa, right? So lessons learned, the way to look at the world. I am better as a thinker and a critical worldview because of grandpa. And oh, by the way, there's some freedom of maneuver because of the financial stability and progress that has been gained by grandpa. So less of the legacy of hey, look at what I did, but more so, hey, what actually is, what's the practical application of my actions on the earth
Yeah.
for my generations to come after me.
Okay. What final comments do you have for listeners out there?
Man, there's a lot I could talk about, but I say I will have to summarize. The most important is not what to think, but how to think. I look at our politics. I look at social media, and we have a lot of snake oil salesmen out there. It's like the old Wild Wild West shows from 1960s. Have this guy on a wagon, has all this stuff coming off, and these uneducated people say, "Hey man, I got this elixir and this tonic and all this," and we have people selling elixirs and tonic right now, except it's very polished on a LinkedIn or IG or a whatever social media platform, and the hair is parted and it's well scripted and great delivery, but these people have never led. And the worst part is some of these people are doing it intentionally, from talking heads on both news channels or whatever you subscribe to, and unfortunately, a lot of politicians. So not a very popular thing to say, but it's just a fact. So that discernment, that's what I was talking about before. Have discernment, the granularity, understanding what people are saying, how they're saying it. Squint with your ears, and that way you're not fooled because we're very mindful of what we put in our bodies. We lock our doors at night. We lock our cars, so we don't want people in our vehicles. But we have no lock, no filter. What, who, and how will allow people to enter our mental space?
Ooh, that's true though. It's so
And,
true.
and trash in is trash out, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say, help people show you receipts, right? When you buy something, you spend money on something, you have receipts. In the military, you don't get chief stripes or general stripes. Your body of work will allow you to have that emblem. That's your receipt. So when people are talking to you,
Yeah.
they must survive that scrutiny. Let me see your receipts, not what you say, not what you write, but what have you done? What's
Mm-hmm.
your body of work? And so that'll be my final, I won't say last message, but a thought is hey, that discernment, show how people show receipts.
That was good. All right. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking time to do this. Like I said, we'll have the link in the episode description. Folks, this has been a great episode. Make sure if you like what we're doing, head over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or theshadowspodcast.com. Leave us a review. Let us know, 5-star review. Let us know what you think, and continue to spread this message out there. Get these episodes out to people. Let's help each other out. Iron sharpens iron. We will see you next week on another episode of the Shadows Podcast.